I want to tell you something very sad that occurred in 1945. This story will make you tears in your eyes. It is a story that rarely gets talked about in detail because it sits in an uncomfortable space between rescue and suffering. When Allied soldiers, including American forces, finally entered concentration camps like Dachau, Buchenwald, and Bergen-Belsen, they did not simply find prisoners waiting to be freed. What they found was a living nightmare that no training manual had prepared them for. The camps were not quiet places of relief. They were places of death that just hadn't finished killing yet. Thousands of people were still alive, but only barely. Their bodies were skeletal, their skins stretched tight over bone, their eyes sunken and glassy. Many could not stand. Many could not speak. The air itself felt diseased. Soldiers later said the smell alone told them something was terribly wrong before they even saw the bodies stacked like firewood. One of the greatest threats facing the liberators was not German guards anymore, but disease. Typhus was raging through the camps, especially in places like Bergen-Belsen. Typhus is a brutal illness spread by lice, thriving in conditions of filth, overcrowding, and starvation. The camps were perfect breeding grounds. People were dying by the hour, not days, but hours. If nothing was done quickly, there was a real risk that the disease could spread beyond the camps, infecting soldiers, nearby towns, and hospitals. The Americans and their Allied counterparts faced a horrifying dilemma. They wanted to help immediately, but touching, moving, or even feeding survivors the wrong way could kill them faster or spread disease. So the first step towards saving lives was something that sounded cold and inhuman, but was medically unavoidable: decontamination. The military organized what they officially called delousing stations. Survivors later remembered them as human laundries, a phrase that sounds cruel but reflected the desperate reality. Every single survivor had to be treated as a potential carrier of deadly disease, not because they were dirty people, but because the camps had turned their bodies into unwilling hosts for lice and bacteria. The process began with clothing. The rags the prisoners wore were often the only possessions they had left, sometimes worn for years without removal. These clothes were infested with lice and soaked in filth. Soldiers had to confiscate them immediately. Many survivors begged to keep them, not understanding why they were being taken away again, afraid they would be left naked or punished. Interpreters and medics tried to explain, but trauma and language barriers made it difficult. Those clothes were not cleaned, they were destroyed, burned in massive fires because there was no safe way to disinfect them quickly enough. For many survivors, watching their last belongings burn was another quiet loss layered on top of countless others. Next came the washing. Survivors were taken into nearby structures, sometimes old stables, sometimes temporary bathhouses set up by the army. Warm water was used, carefully controlled. For people who had been freezing for years, warmth could actually be dangerous if introduced too fast. Medics watched closely. Soap was used gently. Some survivors cried because they had not felt warm water on their skin in years. Others were too weak to react at all. After washing, their bodies were dusted with a white powder called DDT. At the time, DDT was considered a miracle chemical. It killed lice instantly and was used widely by the military. Soldiers used hand pumps, spraying and dusting hair, armpits, seams of the skin, everywhere lice might hide. Photographs from the time show long lines of survivors being dusted, looking confused, frightened, and exhausted. Hair was often shaved, not as punishment, but as prevention. Lice lived in hair, and shaving reduced the risk dramatically. For many survivors, especially women, this was emotionally devastating. Hair had already been stolen once by the Nazis. Having it taken again, even for medical reasons, reopened wounds. Only after this process could survivors be moved safely. Even then, the danger wasn't over. Many were too weak to be fed normal food. Their digestive systems had shut down from starvation. If they ate too much, too quickly, they could die from what doctors later called refeeding syndrome. Some did. Soldiers and doctors learned through painful trial and error that survival required slow, careful feeding with broths in small portions. Despite all efforts, thousands died after liberation. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Freedom did not save everyone. Some bodies were simply too far gone. Soldiers wrote in letters that it felt unbearable to watch people die after being rescued, knowing that help had come just days too late. The camps themselves were also a threat. The wooden barracks were soaked in disease. Lice, bacteria, and death were embedded into the walls and floors. In some places, including Bergen-Belsen, the British and American forces made the grim decision to destroy the camps entirely. Flamethrowers were used to burn the huts to the ground. It wasn't symbolic, it was medical. The ground itself was contaminated. For the soldiers involved, this was not a victory moment. Many later said this was the hardest thing they ever witnessed in the war. Not combat, not battlefields, but standing in front of survivors who looked at them with hope, fear, and disbelief all at once. The process of ensuring survivors were disease-free before entering hospitals and homes was not perfect, gentle, or painless. It was rushed, improvised, and emotionally brutal. But it was done to save lives, both of the survivors and of everyone around them. There were no good options, only necessary ones. These human laundries, the burning of clothes, the shaving, the dusting, and the destruction of the camps were all part of an emergency response to a catastrophe that should never have existed in the first place. It was a harsh beginning to freedom, but for many, it was the only path left. These stories matter because they remind us that liberation is not always clean or cinematic. Sometimes it is messy, painful, and filled with loss even at the moment of rescue. And it reminds us of what happens when human beings are reduced to conditions where even survival becomes a medical emergency. It is something we should never forget.